Physicalism has grown out of physics. I propose a dualism based on not physics, but on evolution. I first list the main principles of physicalism, then I'll respond to them with my Evo-Dualism. Here are the physicalist principles as I know them. 1. Mind and physical matter are distinctively different forms of reality. Principle 2. Mind and matter can't interact. So mind can't make anything physical happen. Mind isn't real. 3. All this is confirmed by the progress of science, which has found no evidence for mind. Principle 4. Because mind can't make anything physical happen, it can't tell our bodies what to do. So what we do can be decided for us only by what's physical about us, our bodies, and particularly our brains. Principle 5. We may experience conscious decision-making, but this is an illusion. That experience can only be a byproduct of brain action cast by the brain into consciousness, like a shadow being cast on a wall. Thinking such a shadow can act back to influence our behavior is an illusion. Now, my Evo-Dualist responses. First, in summary. Principle 1. Mind and physical matter are distinctively different forms of reality. Agreed. But principle 2, mind can't interact with matter. Disagree. Just as something physical can make you feel pain, something mental can affect what you do. Why imagine the connection can go only one way? It can go both ways. Mind can interact with matter. Principle 3, Evo-Dualism says this interaction is confirmed by what we've learned, not from physics, but from how we evolved. So principle 4, since they can interact, it is possible for us through mind consciously to tell our bodies what to do. And principle 5, conscious decision-making is not an illusion. We can arrive at decisions and make our bodies execute them consciously. Now, fuller explanations. Take point 1. Why do physicalists admit that mind exists as well as matter? Because, as far as I can make out, they do experience mind. They experience being conscious. They experience hearing sounds, seeing things, to feeling pain when physically hurt. So they admit that something physical can have an impact on mind, but they insist it can't go the other way. And that's probably because they don't experience being able to consciously drive their behavior. In a response to a survey I posted about this under community in this channel, link in the comments, half the respondents agreed with this. They experience not being able to consciously drive their behavior. In my 20s, I felt the same. My body seemed not to know what I was consciously thinking. It seemed to be going about its business on its own. So it's important to realize that the physicalist principle that mind can't interact with matter may reflect physicalists' actual experience. They experience not being able to consciously tell their bodies what to do, as dualists say they can. This difference in experience, I think, accounts for principle 2. Not being able to experience mind, as dualists say they can, is made a cosmic principle. Dualists are deluded. Mind can't interact with matter. It isn't real. And for them, this is confirmed by principle 3. Non-existence of mind is proved by science. What's the Evo-Devo response? True, science can't provide us with evidence of mind, but evolution can. Think of science and evolution as two entirely different ways of exploring what's real. Limiting itself to the scientific method limits what science can discover. But evolution doesn't have to prove something exists. Whatever it comes across, it may simply apply. If we find evolution applying mind, that proves mind does exist. Science providing us with no evidence for mind tells us more about science than about mind or what's real. How do we know mind is real? If mind wasn't real, evolution couldn't have detected it. And we know evolution detected it because we experience being conscious. Us having evolved mental talents, like our experience of being conscious, proves that mind exists for evolution to discover and apply. So evolution was able to detect mind and apply it. But why would evolution want to apply it and build mental talents into its creatures? Because then living creatures could evolve talents they couldn't get from being purely physical. Mental talents, for example, to help them survive and adapt. Physicalist principle 4. What we do can be due only to what's physical about us. No. We evolved to have mental talents we could then use to tell our bodies what to do. What talents? A present moment, for one. There's nothing like the present moment in the purely physical world. Only having minds makes it possible. With a present moment, you can draw on memory to recall past events, back that up with short-term and long-term memory, and you can construct trains of thought. There's nothing like that in the purely physical world. It can exist only in mind. And I believe we all experience having a present moment like that, in which we can experience hearing and seeing and remembering. Experiencing a present moment is proof that mind exists. I've already deduced from mind's evolving that mind must have a reality substantial enough for evolution to detect it and exploit it. Now we have trains of thought. We can employ other mental talents to arrive at decisions. And because mind is real, evolution could connect those trains of thoughts leading to decisions to our physical bodies so we can implement those decisions in bodily actions. That is the logic behind the Evo-Dualist challenge to physicalism. Now, something about consciousness. I think we evolved to have a present moment, memory, and various other built-in mental talents, but probably not consciousness as we experience it today. I'm a follower of Julian Jaynes, who, in his book, link in the comment below, suggested we develop consciousness in stages, the most crucial of which was the invention of alphabetic writing about 3,000 years ago, through which we could record trains of thought for others to learn how to think in similar ways, how to develop new mental talents. I think that has influenced language in ways that induce consciousness in all of us. But because this is so recent and so dependent on culture, I suspect that's why we may experience consciousness differently. It's a work in progress. Am I saying physicalists lack something that we dualists have? Ability to arrive at decisions in consciousness that we then experience our bodies executing? I can't deny it. But I have another reason for favoring dualism. To me, physicalism, with its insistence we are purely physical, endorses fatalism, that we are totally subject to physical determinism. I prefer to believe that we can create and adopt new mental talents to expand consciousness over what was previously unconscious. An example is Freud's defense mechanisms. Once we encounter them, we can build defenses against being subject to them. Bit by bit, culture extends the reach of consciousness. I prefer that to determinism. I'll end with a few light-hearted challenges to physicalism, specifically in relation to free will. A supernatural being gives you two bins, one for things that have free will, the other for things that are entirely physically determined. You are to put everything in the universe into the appropriate bin. Okay? Done? Now, in which bin will you put yourself? The challenge is, if you go along and imagine accepting the challenge, wondering what would be involved, won't that mean you think you can make that distinction, that you have free will? The appropriate physicalist response, I think, would be to refuse the challenge as meaningless, since everything is entirely physically determined and already in a box, the universe itself. How did you do? Here's another. One determinist says to another, "What's the point of me deciding whether or not to apply for this new job? It's already determined whether I get it or not. But it sure would be better if I applied and got it." The second determinist says, "I'll grant you some virtual free will. It's not real free will, but it's as if you had free will." "Gee, thanks," says the first determinist. And he decides to apply for the job and gets it. A week later, he calls up the other guy and says, "This virtual free will is great. I got the job. How long does it last?" "You dummy," says the other guy. "That was just a joke. You stayed determined just like before." The first determinist puts down the phone and ponders this for a while. Something good happened that wouldn't have if he hadn't believed in virtual free will. So it made a difference. Maybe this virtual free will really does work, he thinks to himself. Maybe I'll declare it operating whenever there's a decision to make, and afterwards I'll turn it off again. But then he thinks, once I've turned the virtual free will on, I understand I can choose to turn it off. But once it's off, how can I choose to turn it back on? Oh, I know. I'll do what he did to me. I'll grant myself some virtual free will. And another. You're about to give a talk on a subject that's very important to you, for which you are eager to get good feedback. You're offered a choice of two lecture halls. The people in one are entirely physical, entirely determined by physical processes, acting on prior events. In the other, people have free will and can react to your talk in the moment, free of being determined. Which hall will you prefer? Or does it not matter? Of course, some physicalists say not only do we not have free will, we're better off without it. That was the message of Robert Sapolsky in his book Determined. But sometimes spokespersons for physicalism communicating the same message give the game away and make the dualist argument for them. Here's Susan Blackmore, psychologist and ardent promoter of physicalism. Yes, she agrees with Sapolsky, quote, "It is possible to live happily and morally without believing in free will. So I long ago set myself about systematically changing the experience. I now have no feeling of acting with free will, although the feeling took many years to ebb away. As for giving up the sense of an inner conscious self altogether, this is very much harder. I just keep on seeming to exist, but though I can't prove it, I think it is true that I don't." But note this, for her to not believe in free will took systematically changing the experience, and as for giving up the sense of an inner conscious self altogether, this is very much harder. These sound like conscious decision-making to me. Thank you, Susan Blackmore, for making our case for us. For a really good discussion of these issues, I recommend an article by John Collins in IAI News, link in the comments. I'm interested in these issues mainly because of their relevance for how we evolved, and how that supports a dualist position. But isn't there something ridiculous about arguing for physicalism or dualism? In practice, we all function equally well. Are we really arguing about something else? Is this a leftover from the atheist religion dispute? Can we make something positive out of it? Answers welcome in the comments.